from the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. We start in Brazil, where the Supreme Electoral Court have responded to claims of electoral fraud by supporters of far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro. In a press conference, members of the court defended the electronic voting system and said there were no irregularities in the first round of the elections. They also confirmed they haven't reached a ruling on the alleged illegal financing of fake news by the far-right Social Liberal Party against the left-wing Workers' Party. Finally, they announced that on Monday, October 22nd, they will hold a meeting with the agencies in charge of detecting fake news. This will come 6 days before runoff elections on October 28th.
In relation to the alleged crimes, the main ones were contracting illegal advertisements, the spread of fake information to sway election results, and vote buying. These are the crimes that are being investigated by the federal police.
And hundreds of supporters of far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro took to the streets of Sao Paulo on Sunday. These demonstrations follow women-led protests across the world against him on Saturday. In Sao Paulo alone, over 40,000 people marched against the rise of the far right.
People from over 100 cities in Brazil and across the world rose to say no to Jair Bolsonaro. They support Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad as part of a call to action by women's groups to prevent the return of a military dictatorship.
I escaped Brazil during the years of the dictatorship. It's horrible to even consider that the people might elect a fascist leader to power.
Chauvinism, fascism, homophobia and racism were all condemned by demonstrators. They're also against Bolsonaro's economic plan that calls for the privatization of all of Brazil's industries.
I took to the street today to defend my own job and to stop a major crime against our nation, to stop the privatization of Petrobras and the inhumanity that a Bolsonaro government represents.
These demonstrations took place just days after news broke out about the Social Liberal Party's alleged illegal financing of fake news against the Workers' Party.
Fake news are nothing new. It's how lies are spread. But the digital age has made them that much more dangerous. Many of us are just realizing the absurdity of this situation. This is unprecedented in human history, the way the worst of the worst are rising to power. But many can see what's going on. What's interesting is that those who are seeing through the veil are rising in numbers. We're going through some turbulence, but this will pass.
During the day of protests, Haddad appeared in Fortaleza with nearly 50,000 people welcoming him. On October the 28th, Brazil will go to the polls once more, and the result will echo across the world.
Moving on to Mexico, the caravan of Honduran migrants who crossed into the country continue their risky trek towards the U.S. border. Thousands are currently walking from Ciudad Hidalgo towards Tapachula in the state of Chiapas. On Saturday, Mexican authorities allowed over 600 migrants through the border, but thousands more decided to cross the river illegally by swimming or handmade rafts. They criticized the slowness in processing their requests to make their way to the U.S. legally. The caravan started over a week ago as thousands of Hondurans fled their homes because of poverty and violence. Some have rejected the Honduran president's claims that they are fleeing in an attempt to destabilize the government.
We decided to join those who were going. This is not political. This comes from hunger, from the drought. It's for prosperity, for a better life. This is not political.
We are suffering for our families, for our children. They force our children to war in gangs. They kill our kids if we don't obey it.
Our correspondent in Mexico, Eduardo Martinez, has more.
Después de caminar más de 7 horas,
After walking for 7 hours from Ciudad Hidalgo near the Guatemalan border, the migrant caravan has arrived to the city of Tapachula. This is seen as one more step toward the north of Mexico. They will travel for several days, using different roads to get to Mexico City and then to try and reach the U.S.-Mexico border. We can report that the caravan will stop and rest in different towns across the nation. Meanwhile, the Mexican government announced that any migrant who crossed the border illegally will receive a sanction and may also be deported. Many local residents are impressed by the amount of people who are part of the caravan. It has been reported that more than 5,000 migrants from Central America are part of the caravan.
Thank you, Eduardo, for that report. U.S. President Donald Trump has once again spoken out against the advancing caravan. He wrote on Twitter that full efforts are being made to stop the onslaught of illegal aliens from crossing our southern border. People have to apply for asylum in Mexico first, and if they fail to do that, the U.S. will turn them away. Previously, President Trump had threatened to cut aid to countries in the region if the caravan isn't stopped. And Mexican police briefly stopped the caravan as it headed towards the city of Tapachula. Authorities say they are simply trying to keep them safe and moving in an orderly manner inside Mexican territory. This follows a statement made by Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto condemning the methods migrants are using to enter Mexico.
This evening, an unprecedented situation happened on the border between Ciudad Hidalgo, Chiapas, and Tecumán, Guatemala. Violent entry into the country not only threatens our sovereignty, but also puts the migrants themselves at risk.
And finally, on Saturday, Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez traveled to Guatemala to meet his counterpart Jimmy Morales. They discussed the means of helping the thousands of migrants.
I want to assure all Honduran migrants that we have deployed an official migration team to help all of you return to our country. We are also willing to provide legal assistance and economic help to migrants depending on what kind of business they want to open, in order to improve their lives and their communities.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur. An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur. In a world infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Interpol has reportedly rejected the Ecuadorian government's request to issue a red alert against former President Rafael Correa. According to Telesur's own Orlando Perez, the agency declared there is no valid evidence to implicate Correa in the alleged kidnapping of former opposition lawmaker Fernando Balda. But Ecuador's national police has said that until now they have not received any updates on the red alert request via the official channels. Interpol officials has been carrying out a review of Ecuador's request and previously set an October 23 deadline for issuing their decision. Julian Assange, who has been living under asylum in Ecuador's embassy in London for the last 6 years, is suing the government of Ecuador. This for alleged violation of his rights. Ecuador released a new protocol which requires Assange to pay for medical bills and phone calls, among other utilities. Assange lawyers Baltasar Garzón say his client was not consulted on these new house rules.
We believe that the protocol violates fundamental rights. It limits the exercising of the right to a defense. It affects the privacy of people that don't have anything to do with the process beyond the possibility of them spending some time with or being with the affected person. And as such, what we are asking the judiciary is that it tells us whether or not this is correct and the possibility of reversing the existing situation. And above all, that the lack of communication should immediately cease.
This weekend, the National Congress of Communes was held in Caracas, Venezuela, with the participation of President Nicolás Maduro. The event gathered neighborhood association leaders to discuss social and economic matters, and also to discuss ways to defend the nation's democracy and sovereignty. Those participating joined the call of President Maduro to contribute proposals for the economic recovery, growth, and prosperity program. Speaking at Congress, President Maduro condemned the ongoing attacks against his government by foreign powers.
Defender la democracia venezolana.
We are defending democracy by not accepting the insolent statements by satellite states of imperialism. We must focus on how our democracy is gaining strength, especially in matters of the economy. We have presented our 2019 budget to the National Constituent Assembly. If we compare our budget to Colombia or Argentina or even the United States, then we can see how much money we invest in our public services compared to them.
The president also spoke against what he called the interventionist measures of the European Union.
In Europe, they can't stop talking about Venezuela. I say this to the EU's representatives. You can't stop talking about Venezuela, but you don't know Venezuela. You only get reports from the U.S. State Department and then make decisions based on that. Decisions that are of an interventionist and neocolonialist nature. So I say this to Federica Mogherini. If you want to see real social democracy, come visit our communities. Come see our people.
And Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza reacted to an interview by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, where he spoke about the economic sanctions imposed on Venezuela. On the interview, Pompeo said, quote, "You've seen the sanctions that we put in place, not just against the country. They sometimes have an adverse impact on the people of Venezuela." To which Arreaza reacted by saying the U.S. Secretary of State admits that the sanctions are an attack against the people. A group of 93 Venezuelans have returned to their country from Ecuador. The group was accompanied by former Venezuelan ambassador Carol Delgado on their way flying home. The ambassador was recently expelled from the country in a show of rising diplomatic tensions between both nations. This is the 7th flight that has left Ecuador under the return to the homeland plan.
They have returned home, a place that now has a brighter future for them than when they left. These migrants have left a life of being victims of racism.
Venezuelans over there don't have any support from the Ecuadorian government. The visa process is not equal for all. People from Colombia have an easier time with the process. We are charged nearly $300 for an appointment that usually takes 6 months. Venezuelans in Ecuador have no advantages.
Cases like this are common for migrants. They're influenced by social media campaigns that promise a better life full of opportunities. They left thinking they would be accepted.
Once there, we realized things are not as they portrayed. There is so much xenophobia, not by everyone, but by enough people. There is no work. I thank God we were able to come back.
Despite the bad experiences, they're enthusiastic about the future. Rejection isn't just limited to migrants. The Venezuelan ambassador to Ecuador was expelled from the country, a move initiated by the right wing.
What they are trying to do is create an image of a Venezuela that is subhuman so they can attack it without consequence, so they can try and strip our sovereignty. They want it to look like Venezuela has no respect for human rights and justify an intervention. This is awful and we must stop it.
The duality of the government and the media to promote solidarity and show concern for Venezuelans have proven to be a ruse. Once they're on the shores, migrants have relayed stories of abuse and exploitation. The Bolivarian government is going the extra mile to bring them back home by air and land.
Heavy rainfalls in Nicaragua have caused new landslides, killing 4 people. This has raised the death toll to 20. According to a spokesman for the National Disaster Prevention System, 16 people died in the last 2 weeks due to heavy rain. Authorities have declared a state of emergency in 6 municipalities and the capital city of Managua. As the rest of the country remains under alert, the government providing victims with food and medical supplies. Heavy rains since Thursday have flooded hundreds of homes in Trinidad and Tobago. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has declared this a national disaster. Luckily, there are no reports of deaths so far, only minor injuries. Many residents had to be rescued from their roofs by neighbors in private boats.
I try to maintain my cool, right? And the persons were panicking a lot because I said earlier, two guys almost drowned me. They were both drowning at the same time, and I was trying to save the both of them. And they both were pushing me down into the water. So it was like, then there was a couple who was like Jack and Rose. They were holding on to an electricity pole. No, the water was like halfway up the electricity pole, right? And they were holding on to the pole. I swam for them 3 times from where I was. That was like about 200 meters away. And they were afraid to come.
Rebels have killed at least 11 people and abducted 15 others, including 12 children, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. According to military sources, the attack was carried out by fighters of the Allied Democratic Forces. A spokesman for the UN peacekeeping mission in the DRC said that peacekeepers had been in a crossfire with suspect rebels near the border with Uganda.
We have only one concern, that the Congolese soldiers and blue helmets leave this region. There is a lot of disorder. If we have another group that will help us, no matter where they come from, as long as we are secure. May our soldiers leave us alone, we no longer need them.
Protesters in South Africa have forced the closure of a church that belongs to a pastor facing charges of raping dozens of women. Members of the African National Congress and the opposition economic freedom fighters gathered outside the church demanding it be shut down. Pastor Timothy Omotoso is currently on trial for sexually grooming and raping about 30 teenage girls. Communal violence in northern Nigeria over the last few days has killed 55 people. Authorities say police have so far arrested 20 people in connection with the clashes. Hundreds of people have been killed this year. Security has become a key campaign issue ahead of the February 2019 elections. A Tanzanian businessman who was kidnapped early this month has been freed and returned with his family. In a tweet, Mohamed Dewji has confirmed his release. He had been kidnapped outside a hotel in the city of Dar es Salaam. The Tanzanian National Police Chief told the press conference that Dewji is being questioned.
2:30 a.m. when I received a call from Mo himself saying he is free and safe. So we had to go and pick him up. Due to the fact that our family was overwhelmed with the good news, we had to go straight to pick him up in Winkana grounds, forgetting to inform the police security. But above all, Dewji is back, safe, and he is doing fine.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this.
Enjoy our programming from Monday to Friday, where you'll find the best information on culture, innovation, conservation, human well-being. Keep up to date on the latest innovations in science and technology with Atomun. The habits and knowledge you need to live a healthy lifestyle are on Guide Your Body. Environmental consciousness is required to preserve our Earth. Undergo your transformation on Green Zone. All about equity, diversity, and respect for identities on By Gender. Cultural manifestations, the art in all its forms, and the stories of real lives. Every day we feature a wide variety of content. Only on Telesur, the news source from Latin America and the Caribbean. An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur. The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur. In a world infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deep into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur. Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur. The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on Telesur.